When a victim of domestic violence finally finds the courage to leave an abusive relationship, they often hope for a new beginning free from control and fear. However, for many, the end of the relationship marks not an escape, but a transformation of abuse, from physical and psychological intimidation to a more insidious form of manipulation, post-separation legal abuse. This phenomenon, where former partners weaponize the legal system to continue their patterns of control and intimidation, represent a particularly devastating extension of domestic violence. This video explores the psychological underpinnings that drive abusers to turn to legal abuse after separation, examining the mental factors at play and the profound reasons choose to control rather than move on. By understanding these factors, we better recognize, prevent, and address this form of abuse that too often hides behind the legitimacy of court systems. Post-separation legal abuse does not emerge in a vacuum, but represents a calculated continuation of pre-existing patterns of control and intimidation. The transition from domestic violence to legal abuse demonstrates the abuser's adaptive capacity for finding new avenues to maintain dominance when traditional methods become unavailable or less effective. Several key factors characterize this transition. At its core, domestic violence is not about anger or loss of control, but about the systemic establishment of power and control over another person. As domestic violence researcher L. Walker notes, abuse is a pattern of coercive behaviors that helps to establish domination over another person. When physical proximity ends after separation, abusers seek alternative methods to maintain this dominance. The legal system, with its complex procedures, potential for financial manipulation, and involvement of children, provides an ideal new battlefield. When victims leave, abusers lose their primary method of control, physical presence, emotional manipulation through daily interactions, and environmental control. Legal abuse becomes a strategic replacement for those lost mechanisms. Through custody battles, false allegations, and financial litigation, abusers can continue to exert influence over their former partners' lives, decisions, and emotional well-being. Legal abuse provides a veneer of legitimacy to the abuser's continued harassment. Where physical violence is socially condemned, legal action, even when frivolous or malicious, is often viewed as an acceptable means of resolving disputes. This legitimacy allows abusers to portray themselves as concerned parents or victims rather than controllers, making their behavior more difficult to recognize and address. The decision to engage in post-separation legal abuse stems from complex psychological dynamics and often underlying personality disorders or mental health issues. Understanding these factors helps explain why some abusers cannot simply move on after a relationship ends. Narcissistic personality traits. Many legal abusers exhibit strong narcissistic characteristics that drive their behavior. Entitlement, a pervasive belief that they deserve special treatment and should not be subjected to the normal consequences of their actions. When a partner leaves, this entitlement transforms into a belief that they still have rights to that person's time, attention, and compliance. Grandiosity, an inflated sense of self-importance that leads them to believe they are uniquely qualified to determine what is best for their children and former partner. This grandiosity convinces them that their perspective is the only valid one. Lack of empathy, an inability to genuinely understand or care about the emotional impact of their actions on others. This allows them to inflict profound suffering through legal proceedings without remorse and need for admiration. A constant requirement for validation and attention. Legal battles keep them at the center of their former partner's life, ensuring that they remain the focus of attention and concern. Antisocial personality features. Some legal abusers display antisocial traits that contribute to these behaviors. Disregard for rules and social norms. A willingness to manipulate and exploit systems for personal gain, including the legal system. Deceitfulness. A pattern of lying and manipulation that enables them to make false allegations and misrepresent facts effectively, and lack of remorse. An absence of guilt or for harm caused to others, allowing them to prolong legal battles without concern for the emotional or financial toll. Borderline personality dynamics. In some cases, features of borderline personality organization contribute to legal abuse. Fear of abandonment. Intense fear of being left alone that can manifest as desperate attempts to maintain contact through any means necessary, including legal channels. Emotional dysregulation. Difficulty managing emotions that can lead to impulsive legal actions driven by momentary rage or hurt. Unstable relationships. A pattern of intense and unstable relationships that may continue through legal conflict after the romantic relationship ends. Attachment disorders. Many abusers have insecure attachment styles that contribute to their behavior. Anxious attachment. A deep-seated fear of rejection and abandonment that can manifest as controlling behaviors to prevent loss. Dismissive avoidant attachment. A tendency to devalue relationships to protect against vulnerability, which can transform into punitive actions when a relationship ends. The decision to pursue legal battles rather than accept the end of a relationship stems from several interconnected motivations that reveal the abuser's psychological needs and fears. Preservation of identity. For many abusers, their identity is deeply intertwined with their role in the relationship. The end of that relationship represents not just a loss, but a threat to their fundamental sense of self. Legal abuse becomes a means of preserving this identity, continuing the partner role by remaining involved in their former partner's life through legal proceedings. They maintain the identity of partner even without the relationship. Parental identity. For many, the parental role is central to their identity. Legal battles over custody allow them to assert and defend this identity against perceived threats. Protector-provider identity. Even when their behavior was controlling rather than protective, they may genuinely see themselves as a family protector, leading them to believe they must remain involved in all decisions. Revenge and punishment. The desire for revenge often drives legal abuse, particularly when the abuser feels rejected or abandoned. Retaliation for rejection. The pain of rejection can transform into a desire to make the former partner suffer as they believe they are suffering. Punishment for perceived transgressions. Legal abuse becomes a means of punishing the former partner for leaving, for perceived shortcomings during the relationship, or for moving on. Restoring power balance. When they feel powerless after a separation, legal abuse becomes a means of asserting dominance and restoring what they perceive as the proper power balance. Financial motivations. Financial considerations often play a significant role in the decision to pursue legal abuse. Economic control. Maintaining financial control over the former partner through legal proceedings provides a tangible form of ongoing influence. Avoiding financial responsibility. Legal tactics may be used to avoid or minimize child support, spousal support, or property division. Economic punishment. Prolonged legal battles can intentionally deplete the former partner's financial resources as a form of punishment. Parental rights concerns. For abusers who are also parents, concerns about parental rights often drive legal abuse. Fear of losing the parent-child relationship. Genuine or exaggerated fears about losing access to their children can drive desperate legal actions. Control through children. Using children as pawns to maintain control over the former partner, knowing that parental relationships provide ongoing leverage. Projection of own fears. Abusers may project their own shortcomings or harmful behaviors onto their former partner, genuinely believing that they are protecting children from danger. Addiction to conflict. Some abusers develop what might be termed an addiction to conflict, drama-seeking behavior, a need for the emotional intensity and stimulation that conflicts provides. Adrenaline rush. The excitement and adrenaline of legal battles can become addictive, particularly for those who struggle with emotional regulation. Familiarity with conflict. For those who grew up in a chaotic or abusive environment, conflicts may feel normal or even comfortable compared to peace. The social and cultural context. The decision to engage in legal abuse does not occur in isolation, but is influenced by broader social and cultural factors. Gender socialization. Traditional gender roles and expectations can contribute to legal abuse. Entitlement to control. Some men may feel entitled to control over their partner and children based on traditional gender roles. Provider identity. The loss of the provider role can threaten masculine identity, leading to a desperate attempts to maintain control through other means. Stigma around male vulnerability. Men who feel vulnerable or hurt after a breakup may lack socially acceptable ways to express these emotions, leading them to channel them into anger and legal action. Cultural beliefs about family. Cultural beliefs about family and marriage can influence legal abuse. Ownership beliefs. Some cultures or subcultures may promote beliefs that spouses or children are essentially property, leading to the sense of entitlement to control after separation. Divorce stigma. In communities where divorce is highly stigmatized, the social embarrassment may fuel a desire to punish the former partner. Honor concerns. In some cultures, the perceived loss of honor from a partner leaving can trigger extreme responses aimed at restoring reputation through legal means. Legal system factors. The legal system itself can enable and encourage legal abuse. Adversarial nature. The adversarial structure of family law can encourage conflict rather than resolution. Financial barriers. The high cost of legal representation can create power imbalances that abusers exploit. Lack of specialization. Courts that don't specialize in domestic violence may fail to recognize patterns of control and manipulation. This lack of specialization can allow abusers to exploit the system, filing frivolous motions and dragging out proceedings without consequences. Inadequate training. Judges, lawyers, and court personnel often lack adequate training to recognize and addressing domestic violence dynamics. This can result in decisions that inadvertently support the abuser's tactics, such as granting custody to the more aggressive parent or failing to enforce protective orders. Systemic bias. Implicit biases within the legal system can favor abusers, particularly if they present as more articulate, financially stable, or socially respected. These biases can lead to decisions that prioritize the abuser's narrative over the victim's safety and well-being. Recognizing the psychological underpinnings and motivations behind post-separation legal abuse is the first step in developing effective prevention and intervention strategies. Several approaches can help mitigate the impact of this form of abuse and support survivors. Legal system reforms. Specialized domestic violence courts. Establishing courts that specialize in domestic violence cases can ensure that judges and personnel are adequately trained to recognize and address patterns of abuse. These courts can implement protocols for identifying and managing legal abuse tactics. Mandatory training. Requiring judges, lawyers, and court personnel to undergo training on domestic violence dynamics, including the continuum of control and legal abuse tactics, can improve the system's response to these cases. Sanctions for abusive litigation. Implementing sanctions for frivolous or abusive litigation tactics can deter abusers from using the legal system as a weapon. This includes financial penalties and restrictions on filing motions without court approval. Enhanced protective orders. Strengthening protective orders to include provisions specifically addressing legal abuse can provide survivors with additional protections. This includes order prohibiting the abuser from filing motions without court approval or requiring them to pay the survivor's legal fees if they engage in abusive litigation. Support for survivors. Trauma-informed legal representation. Providing survivors with access to legal representation that understands the dynamics of domestic violence and legal abuse can significantly improve their outcome. This includes representing survivors in court, negotiating settlements, and advocating for their rights. Mental health support. Offering trauma-informed mental health services can help survivors process the emotional impact of legal abuse and develop coping strategies. This includes individual therapy, support groups, and crisis intervention services. Financial assistance. Providing financial assistance for legal fees, court costs, and living expenses can help survivors navigate the legal system and rebuild their lives. This includes grants, loans, and pro bono legal services. Community education and advocacy. Public awareness campaigns. Raising public awareness about post-separation legal abuse can help reduce stigma and encourage survivors to seek help. This includes educational campaigns, media outreach, and community events. Advocacy for policy change. Advocating for policy changes that address the unique challenges of post-separation legal abuse can improve the system's responses to these cases. This includes lobbying for legislative reform, funding for specialized courts, and training for legal professionals. Community support networks. Establishing support networks for survivors can provide them with the emotional, practical, and financial assistance they need to navigate legal abuse. This includes support groups, mentorship programs, and community resources. Post-separation legal abuse represents a calculated continuation of domestic violence through the manipulation of legal systems and processes. Understanding the psychological motivations and mental factors that drive abusers to engage in this form of control is crucial for developing effective prevention and intervention strategies. By recognizing the signs of legal abuse, advocating for systemic changes, and providing trauma-informed support, we can better protect survivors and their children from the devastating impact of this hidden form of violence. The decision to pursue legal abuse rather than move on stems from a complex interplay of psychological needs, cultural beliefs, and systemic factors. Abusers often exhibit narcissistic, antisocial, or borderline personality traits that drive their behavior, as well as a deep-seated fear of loss and abandonment. The legal system itself can enable and encourage legal abuse with its adversarial nature, financial barriers, and lack of specialization in domestic violence dynamics. To address this issue, we must implement comprehensive reforms that prioritize the safety and well-being of survivors and their children. This includes establishing specialized domestic violence courts, mandating training for legal professionals, and providing trauma-informed support services. By taking a holistic approach that recognizes the unique challenges of post-separation legal abuse, we can create a more just and compassionate legal system that truly serves the best interests of all parties involved.